Make no mistake, the hordes of battery equipment are here. We should expect in the next decade to be overcome with it, and our lives will not be the same. Well, they will generally be the same, except for the moments when we're using the machines. Even then, they'll be about the same. I don't think any fundamental changes to our lives are coming as a result. Hell, our lives will be the same, even after the battery stuff comes and takes our freedom. Recent news has come out of California and New York that some bills have been introduced that are going to begin to limit the sale of gasoline-powered equipment, likely to much joy from some and disdain from others. In my shop, I hear many people idly complain about the EPA and other oppressive rulemakers. I mean, it is pretty ridiculous. I have to have 20 different screwdrivers to turn a carb screw 1/16 of a turn, but I do appreciate the quality of the air, or the fact that the river isn't on fire. But mostly the fact that the regular homeowner can't easily tweak his own carburetor. Saves me some headaches. I do believe we benefit from some of these regulations, and I have some gratitude for the foresight of these administrations. In the early 1900s, most of the East Coast of the United States was clear-cut to create lumber for the mostly unregulated industry. Most of these forests that had existed for millennia were destroyed inside a couple of decades. Such is the endeavor of man. The state of Pennsylvania was some of the most productive timberland on the planet. White pine, hemlock, and red spruce were harvested, used for ship masts, barns, homes, tools, and all of the applications of the Industrial Revolution. This timber is still highly valued in the reclaimed market. First, it began with men cutting up the banks of rivers, then the smaller creeks. They used splash dams to send timber downstream. A splash dam was a method for moving timber downstream before modern power equipment was available. First, they would dam up the creek with a gate, then fill the pond with timber. Finally, they would open this gate, sending the logs down the creek in the torrent that was unleashed. After a series of dams, these logs would reach a navigable river and then float the logs to market. Soon after, the Shay locomotive was introduced. This was a geared steam locomotive that could endure steep grades and poor quality track. Soon these were adopted by the industry, and all remaining timber that couldn't be transported down waterways was cut. Remnants of the old railroad grades lay as evidence in most areas of the state to this day. In the name of progress, these men marched on, leaving a barren landscape behind. With all the leftover slash, wildfires raged, and the ecosystems were changed forever. The soils were burned to bedrock, the land barren and useless. The point here is that without some oversight by a governing body, these companies destroyed the lands on which they operated for the sake of the highest profit margin. And to what benefit to the general public? Joseph Rothrock, widely considered the father of forestry in Pennsylvania, saw the need for something to be done with these damaged landscapes. In this time, as commissioner of the Division of Forestry, he oversaw the acquisition of land for state forests and the development of trained foresters. As these protected forests have grown back, they have been managed in a way they are no longer clear-cut. The land is chiefly used as lumber stock and natural gas extraction for the state, but also for hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, and exploration. I believe Pennsylvania has more protected land than any other state east of the Mississippi. All citizens can benefit from this as a result of these endeavors. A beautiful state with many natural wonders we can enjoy because of the foresight of such agencies. I think most folks could find some solitude in these places and reflect our gratitude. If someone hadn't thought about future generations, what would we have left? How does the proverb go? A society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they shall never sit. Thanks to Rothrock for solving the problem of what was once considered the Great Pennsylvania Desert. I think that no matter which side we stand on politically, we can all agree that public natural spaces are a worthy enterprise. I think there are some parallels here with air quality. Of course, air pollution isn't something we can see as blatantly as clear-cut forest, but it's still an area we could improve. Have you ever gotten behind an older vehicle headed down the road? My, what improvements have been made in the last 20 or 30 years. Maybe we've benefited from these things for so long that we don't even realize it. Is it selfish for us to willfully attempt to destroy some of these for future generations from things that we've gotten to reap benefit from? Also, we can tell our friends we're not pussies as we crack our throttles wide open? Then we may ask ourselves, what about the problems created by the mining and the disposal of heavy metals? Hopefully our modern world will create solutions, i.e. ways to profit from such things instead of just shipping our pollution offshore. I think the jury is still out on this one. These heavy metals still hold value, but it is not outpaced by the cost of recycling. Hopefully some entrepreneur can find a way to crack this nut. Or we may ask how much pollution is created when we generate electricity. That would certainly depend on how our electricity is generated. But herein lies the deeper question. Why are we suddenly concerned about the pollution created by power generation, but not the pollution created by handheld equipment? Aren't we also told to support the coal industry? Do we actually know where our power comes from, how much carbon it produces, and how it stacks up in comparison to how much pollution is created by individual equipment? I certainly don't. We have to think about the scale of what we're talking about here. Using a car as an example, we know that the total emissions created by the vehicle can be broken down into two categories. One, how much carbon it takes to produce the materials in the vehicle and to subsequently manufacture, and two, how much carbon it will emit through energy consumption during its lifetime. Clearly, the electric vehicles take more carbon to produce the original machine because it is necessary to mine the lithium for the batteries. It is quickly eclipsed by the savings in carbon emissions of energy because on average it is much cleaner to produce electricity at a plant than to burn gasoline as fuel. If we get some usage from the machine, it will soon overcome the production costs. Many studies have proven this time and time again. How many gas-powered machines get produced and scrapped each year after people put crappy fuel in them and the machines won't run? The knee-jerk reaction may be to blame the commies in California, but the real catalyst for the shift to battery will be our beloved capitalism. The purchases of most of the machines nationwide will be a choice by consumers. Most people will choose them not because they have to, but because they want to. These are the fastest growing segments of the outdoor power equipment industry. For good reason, too. The technology is swiftly improving. They're powerful, they're quiet, they're reliable, and they're lightweight. They make chores less chore-like for most people. There's no question the batteries are expensive, but so is a gasoline engine replacement and overhaul, as well as the cost of fuel. If we can expect similar life out of batteries that we can an engine, which is plausible, the complaint about the cost of the batteries as a replacement item is moot if we use the gasoline engine lifespan and the cost of fuel and maintenance as a comparison. I remember the days before I had a basic understanding of gas-powered equipment. Trying to make stuff run when it didn't want to was a frustrating journey. Usually ended with a starter rope in my hand and a piece of equipment that went for an impromptu flight, emission-free and carbon-free, courtesy of my arm. For the average person, this fight of the gas equipment is eliminated with battery equipment. Operator push button, operator go. Hell, there is scantly an hour of the day where I'm not using some type of device that has a lithium battery in it, or at least carrying one or two on my person. What type of boogeyman has the power equipment industry put into their batteries that has left me so afraid and emasculated? I'm not completely sold on them yet as a shop owner, and the demand for them still hasn't surpassed the demand for gas equipment, but I can recognize them as a growing segment of the industry. I had better get on board before I get passed up. This equipment will be developed and marketed fiercely to the homeowner, the landowner, and the professional. These categories have been growing and improving since long before any real legislation has come to pass about such things. This tells us one thing. Consumers already want this product in droves. The tide has already turned. We can now step back and bear witness to it. Capitalism has long been considered the engine of innovation, and it most certainly is. Before threatening that someone would have to take my chainsaw from my cold dead hands, I may have to consider that the free market has already chosen. I think most people can appreciate the fleeting smell of two-stroke or the exhaust note of a specific chainsaw, but in 20 or 30 years, the general public will say, I can't believe you used to run those things, just like the old relic chainsaws I have in my window.